Welcome all to another Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare podcast episode. I am your host, Matt Kinn, Segment Development Manager for Healthcare and Access Americas. And largely what I do at Access is I work at identifying healthcare solutions that can benefit from Access technologies. And I am joined today by somebody who may not need an introduction, but for formality's sake, we will do it. Mr. Todd Miller. And Todd is the System Vice President of Security at SSM Healthcare. Todd, why don't you tell the group a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my role is generally just programmatic oversight for our security department, 23 hospitals, 600 outpatient buildings, maybe a little more. And really, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today, it really revolves around what a lot of my team that I'm blessed to have has been really working with and figuring out how security technology today, where it's going, and how it can really impact the safety for our staff, patients, and visitors in our facilities.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I'd probably do the housekeeping thing, right?
Oh,
yeah. And then we'll dive into it. But if you're joining for the first time, or if you're revisiting, just as a quick reminder, the podcast series largely is to have more dialogue around artificial intelligence use cases in healthcare. I feel like a lot of times you can't get the context needed without a little bit more of a discussion, because you're never going to get all the information from a data sheet or a white paper.
Absolutely.
And that's where a program could be very successful, or it can go to the other end of the spectrum based upon just little bits of nuance that exist within the use cases and the technology. So
and people that have used it, and you can learn from. Right?
Exactly. And so on the last episode, we had Mr. Stephen Jusam on, and what we focused on was, what is artificial intelligence to Access? Common problems that Access is being asked to solve. Not everything all-inclusive by any means, but definitely some common ones. And then how to make it visual and actionable, which to me is the gold standard. I'm not sure what your opinion is, and everybody's most certainly entitled to what's the most valuable for their organization. And that may vary, but getting an alert in live time and that's actionable right in the moment is kind of where you gotta be.
It's game changing.
Yeah. And so if you find that type of information valuable, most certainly, click on that episode, watch that. We'd be very appreciative if you would. But the big reason I had you come on, Todd, is you're very accomplished in this space. You would be what I would consider an early adopter of artificial intelligence in your program. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to credit a lot of my team that helps with that. But yes, so we were again blessed to have the support, especially from leadership. And looking forward again, where we are now, what can be better and what's cutting edge, and obviously AI now. And I like to formally say I do welcome our AI overlords, and I wish to have a fruitful life under their rule. And so we can make sure that that's on tape. But that's where we're headed, right? And we all know it's happening, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And again, having a team that started exploring that early and being a part of that process has definitely given us some learnings that we're trying to share and may share today, and really a lot of successes as well.
And that's exactly it. I want to be able to bring it to the audience here, what you've learned, things like that. Pre-implementation evaluation processes. I think it's incredibly important. On the previous podcast, we had Roger on. I don't think you've had the benefit of being able to see it yet because it hasn't aired. But he's talking about how no two models are alike, and how the data is captured, all that type of stuff. I think it's incredibly important to talk about that. How to be able to communicate successes, what's working for the organization, and then what's a reevaluation process look like for the organization? Because I don't know that I hear that enough, but it's one of those things where I guess if you had to summarize it, I would say life cycle of an AI model within the hospital, within a clinic, within an outpatient, with an MOB, what have you. That's what I really want to talk about. And with that, I think would probably makes most sense to start with pre-evaluation. Yeah. And when you look at pre-evaluation, there are no two models that are alike, whether it's going to be how the data is generated to build the model, or how is the hardware performing? How does the hardware perform over time, right? It's not all created equal. How does, general process of building out that program, how do you identify what's needed during the pre-implementation stage? Because at implementation, it might be too late.
Yeah.
And so why don't you just take us through where you've seen successes.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. Pre-implementation is where a lot of the work has to be done because you're trying to figure out what functional requirements or what capabilities do you think that system can do. And if your expectation is that for it to do X and align with, again, whatever risk you're trying to mitigate or not, and as you start to implement it and learn about it and figure out thresholds of analytic, alarms and where it works and where it doesn't, it's tough because it's so new. And early on, again, as a pre-adopter, as you put it, we were kind of figuring out on our own, and we didn't have a lot of other organizations to bounce ideas off of or work together to say, hey, is this working for you, or is there something you could do or share with us that we can help communicate out to the industry as being a success or maybe a failure even to learn from. I will say that's changed now. I think there's a lot more information out there like this today to actually bounce ideas off of or at least glean some insight off of. So for us, the first thing, just again, what were we trying to accomplish? For instance, when we were doing camera analytics, we had the belief that it could take the place of some regulatory requirements that, during surveys from our regulatory bodies, we thought there was certain application for that. Came to find out that we were kind of overshooting what we thought it could do and what it actually did. And that was on us. So, kind of dialing back and saying, nope, that actually doesn't do what we thought it would do. It's a hard lesson learned. It's something that now we can share with others. But you'll never also wipe out the human component of it. So I think we'll never try to replace a human completely. You can't do that. We just want to supplement what that human can do and maybe shorten the response gap from those analytics. And this morning, a great example. Where were you at 8 a.m. this morning?
I was outside the hotel because the fire alarm went off.
Absolutely. And some of us in the same hotel, after an alarm went off,
yes,
may have peeked out at our door. And said, do we smell smoke? Do we see fire? Do we see people running? And may have stayed in our hotel room until that was verified. So that was the human component of an alarm. And I think there's always going to be some part of that where a human has to make that critical thinking decision after an alert. So again, lesson learned after implementation of some of our analytics is it's not replacing a person, right? It's just supplementing or giving them a tool in the toolbox for maybe a shorter response gap. So I think, again, as we implemented, and now we're I think at a good clip of understanding what they do, the capabilities, and how it does supplement our officer force. Now we feel like we're on a path toward success for a lot of these. The problem is the minute you think you're comfortable, out comes, something new, right? And a new space is explored. It does happen. And Axis, other companies that are out there, everybody is working hard to figure out what that next new step is. So I think really what we're doing today is a great example of if you have an organization to reach out to that has implemented analytics or AI in some way, shape, or form, reach out. And it's such a tight community, especially in the healthcare security industry through IHOS and just relationships. Learn from others, right? And then figure out where it fits for you.
No, I think that's excellent. And we are fully aligned on human in the loop, human making the decision, actionable items coming from a human being. Just get them the data that they need to make an informed decision. And I want to talk and kind of unpack your sense of community, because I do believe the community has grown. Mm-hmm. The organizations within healthcare, especially that it's healthcare security, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It can be bedside staff communities. They are more accepting, and the appetite is really high for artificial intelligence. And I think that that's going to overall raise the bar and the acceptance. And people are going to see like, hey, this really worked for us. This did not because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that that's a very important part of building the community out, just from general acceptance as well as understanding what we're doing. And on the concept of community, how do you communicate successes within your organization today of some sort of implementation that you have? How do you go about that?
A great question. I think if you're a security leader out there, we all have the same thing in the back of our heads. How do you promote a success of something that didn't happen? When security is working, things don't happen.
Absence of threat.
So there's there's always this kind of challenge of showing that return on investment, if that's your thing, or showing a reduction in whether it's workplace violence numbers. For me in my organization early on, a lot of our challenge was if something did happen that we could actually draw on as an experience. For instance, if we found an eloped patient quicker because of like an appearance search type function. Whereas in the past, we'd have to, check a bunch of different camera angles and whatnot. Just saying, hey, this incident was resolved quicker. Nobody was hurt because of it. And kind of showing what that even looks like from a time perspective. How many staff members were involved with this for 15 minutes, half hour, 2 hours, if it's a bad incident, and saying that was all short. So even just getting back to normal operations could be a return on investment. Then when you think of things like theft, maybe retail space or gaming, I don't know, anything like that, where you're showing we picked up this alert or this AI generated alarm or whatnot, and this is how we caught the person, and coming back and saying, this is something that was, again, showing direct return on investment. I think for healthcare, and where we start to see some of that dovetail is with our clinical partners. When you start talking about, an analytic or an AI generated alarm that comes off of somebody getting out of bed, right? That's an issue of somebody that's supposed to stay in their bed and they get out too early and fall risk. That's a liability. That's a risk for an organization in healthcare. And that's something that unfortunately can lead to a lot of claim.
Yeah, they're expensive. Number one cause of injury is a fall within a hospital. So it's just brutally bad statistics associated with it too. And they're not exactly happy.
Right.
The patient.
No, and that's a bad patient experience. Never forget the patient. So even just showing that is something that was prevented, and you could, again, align some sort of monetary amount to what you prevented there, and really communicating it up the chain. Our leadership, especially in healthcare, has a hard job because they're constantly trying to figure out, where does that money go? Where does that capital go? It could go to an MRI. That's a revenue generating piece of equipment. Or it could go to cameras, access control, body-worn cameras, all these things. So anytime there is a win like that, and coming back and saying, look what we prevented, or look what we shortened as a duration of an incident, and saying, thank you, one. Two, look what the patient experience is, look what we did as far as a prevention of claims, those are the things that have to be communicated back up. And the what's in it for security is, a lot of times that can lead to not only trust in where that money is going and in our departments, but also with future spend towards maybe expanding that program of cameras or radios or whatever it could be. So I think that's one of the most important things to do, is make sure you're communicating back up from the bottom to the top on how you're using it and how we're getting return on investment.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. What you talk about certain AI models that you see a lot of benefit in from being able to show immediate ROI. What is a AI model that you've used? And it doesn't have to be within the hospital. It could be a clinic. It could be anywhere that you've used that like your program would not be the same without.
Right off the bat, I immediately think of our camera analytics. It's game changing. And when you think about what your normal daily operations are for a patrol officer, for instance, in rounding, right? You always hear rounding and rounding. There's a lot that can be done to use analytics in the place of rounding in places where nothing's happening. So an easy example is a lot of healthcare campuses or expanded hospital campuses will have like medical office buildings attached. And a lot of times the old patrol plans where you patrol in the hospital, then you go check on the MOBs, medical office buildings, and you're going around the floors, you're checking doors, you're checking stairwells. If you have a camera that can tell you that nobody's there and all your access control is showing that it's all still locked up tight, why are you including that in your rounding plan? So pulling that officer into a high-risk area, like for us, behavioral health, labor and delivery, emergency department, ICU, and taking that officer resource and aligning it with strategic priority in a high-risk area, right there, one, you're using data. Usually most people will have workplace violence data to say, here's where our high-risk areas are. So one, you're taking that officer that would be rounding on a big campus, and you're putting them into an area that they're 10 times more useful. There's plenty of studies that are shown through IHOS. Even our organization did an independent study based on an IHOS study that shows when an officer is present workplace violence is less likely to occur. It's simple. Like, think if you had an officer assigned to every single clinical partner out there, workplace violence would drop to the floor. Now, monetarily, we can't do that. We have to be reasonable at some point. But even just having an officer present in a unit and having that replacement of where it's not needed, where a person is not needed, and putting that resource where they are needed, that's a great use of analytics for us. I can't think of going back to our old model at this point.
Yeah.
And now we're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And we understand its use and its value. With that, I think the second part, or maybe a tier of that, is reducing the response gap. So instead of, having a witness see an event, called into a dispatcher then dispatches an officer, the officer then responds. Now you're shortening it from an event happening, it's going straight to an officer and actually having a dispatcher give real-time information. So you're kind of cutting out a little bit of a step there and getting that officer on site quicker. Seconds feel like minutes, minutes feel like hours when you're involved in an incident, as most of the audience probably understands. So really shortening that response gap is another, I would say, maybe an underlying concept to a lot of the analytic benefits. Yeah,
it's a real tangible benefit.
Absolutely.
And it's all based upon just making informed decisions. Optically, I can see what I need to see, or if I can't, then I go investigate. It doesn't mean that the person's not ever going to do a round, right? Or they're going to go through and do it. It's just when, how, not during peak high census,
Sure.
You're not going to do that, right? And so that makes perfect sense to me. I think and I appreciate you sharing that. So on topic of it, very specifically, is the reevaluation of an existing model that's being used. So ASIS does ASIS.
Either way, you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. If they're watching, ASIS, they do a really good job. And I remember when I was going for my PSP or my CPP, I can't remember which one it was, doesn't matter. There was a lot of content around, evaluation, whether it's going to be a threat assessment, vulnerability assessment, whatever assessments you're doing, you're working with a consultant or a trusted advisor, what have you, you're going through all this evaluation stage. Then there's the implementation stage. Then there's I'm using it and maintaining it. And then there's like the reevaluation part where we sought out, like what you were talking about, is we identified a problem, which you have to start with identifying the problem. AI by itself just doesn't.
Yes, right.
Exactly.
At this point, yeah.
Otherwise you just,
Right.
yeah. And so, but the whole idea being is that, does it still do what we originally intended it to do? And is it still needed? And that reevaluation stage, and I think some of it's time to market. I don't hear a lot about that in the artificial intelligence deployment lifecycle. But ASIS does a good job of explaining what the expectations are for these type of technology.
Mm-hmm.
The access control system that you have is, if it's not working for you, you're going to replace it at some point, or it's going to get an upgrade if that's what's needed, because it's not executing the job. It's not justifying its existence anymore. How are you addressing that with AI today? Because time to market, and it really hasn't been that long.
Right.
You look about it, it's not even a blink in time.
Yeah, we're still on the forefront, right?
Oh,
very, very early, and there's already a lot of literature out there saying that this is just the beginning. I would be lying if I said my organization, or I should say my department, does a really good job of keeping direct metrics that are correlated to AI, and we are seeing XYZ. Again, you can put some ROI on it. You can show what maybe you've prevented or shortened the duration of an incident. For me, and probably a lot of the healthcare audience, security audience, a lot of what we look at are lagging. We call them lagging indicators of AI being a part of a larger workplace violence prevention program. So if you're using AI in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, again, analytics, response time, shortening response time, or weapons detection, and you're looking at, struck by patient metrics or data, number of indemnity claims, medical claims, incidents. For us, a lot of what we're doing is seeing where that plays in. And again, it's not just technology. There's the human component is really what's driving it. And it could be, even clinical education of de-escalation programs or security de-escalation programs. All those things are factors in driving down workplace violence metrics. We all know that. But seeing a defined line of where maybe you are reallocating resources and saying, well, since we now don't patrol and we use these rounds, again, back to my example of rounding, we don't round in the medical office buildings from 7 to 9 anymore. And now there's an extra officer in the emergency department. And all of a sudden you look and you say, well, that's interesting. We have 3 less indemnity claims that month, or medical claims that month, or incidents. Now you're starting to see this is a part of a greater program that is working, or that at least has some value, or showing that in a quick response to an assault, that the longer an assault takes, severity goes up. Again, claims go up. So even just looking at how quickly you are responding based on an analytic alert, those are things that you can come back and evaluate and say, a little asterisk, maybe this was the reason why this was an incident instead of an indemnity claim or a DART claim, right? Or a DART incident. I think that's a big part of it, and just watching your watch metrics, if you will, of the lagging indicators coming out of workplace violence. And now you take all that, you put in a workplace violence committee and dig in a little deeper, and then communicating that back up to your leadership, saying, this is what we found, or maybe these are some things that we have learned that the technology or AI has helped with. I can tell you one thing that we do have metrics on when you talk about AI and through weapons detection.
Yeah.
Just how many weapons you prevent coming into a facility. That's something where I think you open a lot of eyes, and you also get the confidence in your staff of saying, wow, this was something that I worried about, who had a gun, who didn't, while they were in our care areas. And now they're focused on patient care. They're not focused on, does this person have a knife? Does this person have a gun? They can focus on what they're there to do, which is provide patient care without distraction or without fear. And I think sometimes when you look at even just the perception of safety and actual safety and how that translates into satisfaction from staff, and then if you want to go even further down the line, retention of staff because they feel safe.
Yeah.
So those are things that you could track. I think those are things that you can, always get, clinical partner feedback on surveys and saying, do you feel safer than you did last year at this time? Because now we have these things in place. They're, again, analytics, cameras, officer response times are lower, weapons detection units are in place. All those things can help really communicate what's happening and is it working.
Yeah. So if I were that was fantastic and very informative. If I unpack that just a little bit, it sounds to me that, and please confirm this, that you're almost continuously evaluating based upon the metrics that you're pulling. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's always in perpetuity. You're never going to stop looking, and especially when you're talking about retention and you're talking about culture and again, how it's all interconnected. You're never stopping. And I think that's, at least in the healthcare space, you're always trying to improve. Constant quality improvement is something that is baked into healthcare in general, whether it's, why was there a wrong site surgery, to how did this person get into the facility with a weapon, to why did this assault take place on this unit at this time with this patient. Those are all things that you dissect to the nth degree, and because you always are looking to get better. So having a hand in some of those things and finding those clinical dovetailed use cases, like we were talking about a patient getting out of bed or a slip, trip, fall, like those are all things that play into that as well.
You're on the same team.
Yeah.
Trying to make a patient experience better.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Security we always say security wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the healthcare space, right? So it's like, it's such an easy concept. Sometimes you forget. Sometimes you forget. And sometimes we have to remind officers that, we're just not out there protecting a building for nothing.
Yep.
And remind of the mission behind what we're doing.
And you are mission specific too, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So we talk about building things out into the future, and you were alluding to that a little bit there too, is it's moving fast. There is a lot of technology. There's a lot of demand for this type of technology, right? And what do you think we're going to be talking about in 2 years? What's the future hold?
Oh,
or you can even be, what do you want it to be? It could be anything like
easier and cheaper. I think we can all agree those are two things we'd love it for it to be, but realistically, that's not the case. In my mind, again, a world according to Todd, which doesn't amount to much, but I feel like the end goal is, remember Minority Report?
Absolutely.
And then the weird
People in the bath. I remember,
people the balls coming down, and it's like murder. And when you think about like that's where you want to go to be that predictive, right? That before it even happens, you're already dispatching a unit to prevent the person.
Sure.
Could happen down the line. I think we're going to start looking at how AI on the security side is, again, at the very least, integrated with a lot of clinical application or health applications. So it may be, Todd's respiration rate goes up because I'm escalating and my hands are clenching. And my health history shows that I have assaulted a healthcare worker in the past. Maybe it's the temperature of my skin going up. And in that visual AI model is now married with some sort of health information. And all of a sudden you go, this person is now at a greater risk for committing assault or escalating. I don't know. Again, there's a lot to think about there, but could it happen?
What I'm hearing is more interoperability with communication systems, because you're talking about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding it, is that you're talking about a security workflow that's going to be absolutely be driving data and back and forth with like what you would consider like data from inside the electronic medical record.
Right.
And so like these systems communicating in harmony, trying to provide more data to relevant parties.
Yeah. That may sound crazy now, but I mean, a lot of people have Apple Watches, right? So you can see heart rate go up. What if there was something where if you're, and again, it sounds crazy, but if you're a patient with our organization and you come in, maybe your watch syncs directly into our system. Mm-hmm. And there's something that almost in real time says your heart rate's elevated, your cortisol levels are up. I don't know. Could we do it? Maybe not 2 years, maybe 5 years, but really looking at almost like behavioral and health pre-indicators of somebody in a path or trajectory towards a violent act or escalation at the very least. Like that's where I think it's going down the line. That would be something that would be neat. In 2 years, I think we're already there. It just needs to be better refined. And that is all these systems as far as body-worn cameras, LPR, regular, VMS systems, access control, all the ones that we know and love, all working in conjunction or integrated to the point of complete integration and alerts going to officers. It's already happening. It's just going to be getting better and better and better, like having LPR coming out of a body-worn camera from an officer on patrol in a parking lot. Something as simple as that could be a huge benefit for a patrol. That to me is where it'll be in 2 years, but I really want to see that red ball come down the little spiral steel ramp. Like that's before I die.
I don't think it's all that far off. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say or not. It's not an Axis thing. It's a partner, but optical measurements of humans is absolutely on the horizon. So with that, I think this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for having me.
Todd, it's wonderful, of course. And for everybody listening in, I hope it was beneficial for you. And most certainly stay tuned for our next episode with artificial intelligence in healthcare. Thank you.